Hello Masters, and welcome to your first video on awakening. So we are going to finally get into what do we actually do about all this toxicity, and now that I've rambled on and on and on about philosophy and all these things, we're ready. Okay, so yes, we're approaching this with self-love. We're approaching this with long-term vision in mind. We're approaching this with how do I be reasonable and rational? How do I awaken slowly so that I don't blow my fuse and become crazy? That's what this is all about, all right? So now you know everything about toxicity. You know essentially the bottom line is that the human body is naturally alkaline, that all the acidic substances in our food and in our environment stick to our cells and tissues. They get dehydrated in the cells and tissues because the body is warm inside, and then they essentially just permeate and toxify the body over time. We accumulate these toxins, we have inherited these toxins, and so we are in a state of essentially acidic toxicity and dehydration, yes? And this is what slowly creates blockages in the consciousness, in the flow of energy through the body, in the body's doing anything that it's going to do. So the root of all disease is technically constipation, blockage, that then leads to, mucus production. It leads to blockages of sugar getting into cells, and then this proliferates candida, yeast, mold, fungus, parasites, and so on and so forth. And then we eventually get into tissue degradation, into organ degradation, and that's where we start to see disease. And so now you understand all that, so what do we do about it, right? That's what we've all been waiting for several weeks now. Okay. So the first thing that we've talked about, right, is that there's 3 phases in cleansing. There's the awaken phase, there's the process phase, and there's the release phase. In the awakening phase, essentially what we're doing is we're using food, which is very cool. This is like a very, very cool thing. We're using food as a tool to electrically attract, to magnetically attract these acidic wastes out of our cells. And we're using food to hydrate these wastes so that the body can move them through the liver, move them through the lungs, move them through the kidneys, and then get them out of the body through the colon and the kidneys and the skin. We sweat it out, right? This is what the awakening phase is all about. It's about taking in these foods that are electrically, magnetically very alkaline, right? So understanding that the acidic wastes are quite acidic and dry, and that's what's making them stick to our tissues. The cells and tissues of the body are relatively neutral. They're in the middle, right? They're 7.4 pH, not very alkaline, just slightly alkaline. So then when we take in very alkaline foods, right? So foods that are in the 7, 8, 9 pH range after digestion, yes, that are rich in water, natural containing water. What's going to happen is that these foods are going to start to circulate through the body with all that chlorophyll and all that, right, all their alkalinity. And they are going to, as I said, right, they're literally going to be magnetically attracted. The acidic wastes are going to be magnetically attracted to these alkaline substances that are flowing through your bloodstream more than they are attracted to the relatively neutral tissues of the body. Yeah, so that's how we draw them out. But really what's happening is that these alkaline water-containing substances that we take in and we digest and then they get into the bloodstream flow through the bloodstream, get into the cells and tissues, hydrate the waste, and magnetically attract it out of the cell. So the cell contracts because the waste expands. Yes, the waste expands. The cell contracts because now it's full, right? Just like we talked about with the colon. When the waste is all contracted and dehydrated the way that it is in our bodies because our bodies are warm and are constantly drawing moisture out of everything that's inside, the cell can't contract enough to get it out, right? But because when we take in this water-rich alkalinity, so this is what we're going to talk about, the awakening foods are the foods that are the most alkaline and water-containing. When we take in these foods, yes, we're literally putting things into our biochemistry that are magnetically attracting these acidic wastes out of the cells into the bloodstream to be carried out of the body after being processed. Okay? So, but now you understand, right? Processing is the bottleneck. How vital our organs are dictates how much of these foods we want to be including in our diet. So we're going to get more into the details of this in the next video. But in this video, I want to just continue to talk a little bit more about the philosophy of this, the idea of this, the overarching idea of this. But please do not now make this that alkaline foods are good and acidic foods are bad. Okay, that is not the case, right? You know this, and I'm just going to make this clear again. What is good for us right now is completely relative. It's unique to each individual. What is an actual health food for you right here, right now? Are the foods that are encouraging just enough awakening and just enough processing to start to move toxicity out of your cells and tissues without causing toxic detox, which is asking the body to process, asking the body to process toxins that are above its level to process. Okay? That's our fine line. That's what we're looking at. That's the healthy diet for you. Okay? So for most of us, that's not going to look like a 100% raw foods diet or a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. It's going to look different than that. Okay? So we will get into the details in the next video, but in this video, I'm just going to give you an overarching view of food. So these cleansing foods, these awakening foods, are the alkaline water-containing foods that help to awaken the stored tissues, the stored toxins in our body, and essentially help to usher them out of the body. Okay? So when we're looking at a food, most people, right, look at the food as with only one thing in mind, which is the nutrients it contains. What is it giving me? Okay? That's one element and one aspect of food, and it's an important one, right? Because the nutrient composition of the foods that we're taking in is incredibly vital for that integrity phase, right? The restoring the power of our organs and our cells and our tissues is absolutely dependent upon the nutrition we're taking in, okay? So again, this is why I'm not a huge fan of fasting, and I'm not a huge fan of extreme detox diets, because we're ignoring the idea. We're going into a philosophy of the body just heals itself. This is true, but it requires nutrients to do that, okay? So it's not that food is some sort of magical healing thing that, you know, maybe the medical medium would have us believe that this food is doing this magic thing and this food is doing this no, okay. Natural foods have vital nutrients that when we take them into our bodies then have the building blocks to do what it needs to do to be healthy. There is no magic there, okay? But if we're going to just completely ignore nutrition and say the body will do it on its own, then we're believing that we should be breatharian. And I don't think anyone's been able to prove that that's true. So nutrition is a part of this, but it's not the only part of this. So the first component of food is, what does it give me? Yeah, that's the first thing we need to consider. Is it nutrient dense? Is it not nutrient dense? What are the nutrients it contains? That's definitely a part of it, okay? And again, if you've studied nutrition, if you've got a nutrition diploma, if you've looked into nutrition, that's going to be what you learn, okay? The second most important thing that we need to look at with food is, what does it leave behind after it has been digested? Okay, so this is where we start to see that the putter-inner theory that Gil Jacobs talks about, all we're looking at is, what does this food give me? This is where we start to see this is why it doesn't work, okay? Because that is not the only thing that matters. So for instance, if we look at an apple versus a hamburger, both of these two foods have nutrients, right? There's vitamin C, there's fiber, there's pectin, which is a fiber. There's, I had a fancy nutrient in apples. Doesn't matter. There's all these, right? There's nutrients, there's vitamins, minerals, sugars. There's many, water, right? Nutrients in this apple. At the same time, in the hamburger, right? The bun was probably fortified with B vitamins, the flour in the bun. There's iron in the patty. There's maybe some lycopene in the tomato ketchup. There's such and such nutrients in this hamburger. However, when we eat the hamburger, yeah, and it's digesting in our bodies, the acidity in that hamburger is going to leave behind a sludge in the body, right? Those processed grains, that processed white flour in that bread is not something that the body recognizes as food. And if anyone's ever made paper mache, right, you know that when you mix flour and water, it becomes like a paste, a glue. That's literally what happens in the body when we eat processed grains. They stick to the tissues. It literally gets stuck to the colon walls, right, and sinks into the colon walls. And it starts to take up that negative space. This is how we introduce toxin into the body through food. It's this post-digestive. What is happening? How much of this food can the body actually eliminate? And how much of it sticks behind in the cells and tissues due to the fact that it's sticky, it's acidic, it's dry, yeah? So again, that hamburger meat is very dry, it's dehydrated. How much work the body has to do to even break it down, the amount of time it has to stay in the system, getting more and more and more dehydrated as it stays in the system, determines how sticky it's going to be in the cells, right? So it's that hamburger is leaving behind a lot of stuff in the body. It's leaving behind blockage, whereas the apple doesn't leave anything behind. Well, aside from the nutrients, right? We pull out the nutrients, but then is there blockage created through this food or not? And then the third thing, right? So we have, what does a food give me? What does it leave behind post-digestion? And what does it take with it when it leaves? So again, if we look at the hamburger versus the apple, the hamburger has little to no fiber, little to no water. It is very acidic. So therefore we know it's not pulling anything out of the cells, right? It's not going to pull anything out of the colon. It's not going to help move waste out of the body. Whereas the apple is alkaline. It's got tons of fiber, which adds bulk to the stool, which we know pulls toxins out of the body. And it's water rich. So not only is it nourishing us with its sugars and its vitamins and its minerals, it's hydrating our bodies, it's hydrating toxic waste, and it's moving things out of the system because it contains all that fiber that, right? Because again, we, in this awakening phase, part of the awakening phase is that we electrically, magnetically attract the acidic waste, we hydrate them, we move them into the eliminatory organs, and then the biggest and main eliminatory organ is your colon, all right? And so what fiber is doing is it's binding to all this toxin that's being awakened in your body, and it's binding to them in the colon, and the fiber is moving them out, right? Because we know that the colon does not contract until it's full. Our colons were designed to take in lots of fiber, okay? Not cow level fiber, and we're going to get into this, but our bodies need fiber to move anything, right? And we understand that movement is the key to life. So if fiber is key for moving the colon, peristalsis requires fiber. Constipation comes from a lack of fiber. We understand, and again, understanding too, that these fibers actually bind to toxic materials and help move them out of the system. We can see that just because the apple and the hamburger both have nutrients, it doesn't make them equal in their healing capacities for the body, because we need to also understand what's being left behind and what the food is taking with it when it leaves. Okay? So these are the three things that we look at when we look at a food. What is it giving me? What is it leaving behind after digestion? And what is it taking with it when it leaves? All right? So this is how we start to see food as this tool that we can use to either toxify the body further or to help detoxify the body. Yeah? That the body, yes, is designed to detoxify in conjunction with the nutrients that we use. So food is actually something that is meant to be in this very synergistic, loving relationship with the body. okay? And this, I wanted to mention this in the food philosophy video, and I forgot, so I'm going to mention it now. That we are meant to enjoy our food. We are meant to have an enjoyable, loving communion with our eating. And when we're really in alignment with ourselves, the foods that we eat, the foods that we love, and the foods that we crave should all be the same foods. And when we're working from a place of self-love, we're going to get there. And that's going to change over time. Okay? So to give you an example, like on my journey, I've been into this since I was 14. What I ate as a 14-year-old and what I eat now as an almost 30-year-old are very, 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 very different. And it's not because I've used willpower to get myself to some sort of philosophical idea. Okay? Anytime I tried to do that, and I've done it many, many times, anytime I tried to force myself to eat foods that I didn't actually love but I thought were good for me, okay? That's the hugest thing. Or to really not eat foods that I just was like convinced were bad for me but that I loved, I didn't make progress. Okay? And this is something that I know is hard for us to wrap our minds around, but we need to be able to wrap our minds around this. Okay? There is a certain level of pleasure that needs to be taking place when we're eating for foods to be healing. So I'm definitely not saying this philosophy of like, if you just, believe that your brownie is good for you enough and you have enough pleasure while you eat it, that it's good for you. This is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if we're going to eat what we're eating, we need to eat it with presence, and we need to allow ourselves to have pleasure while we eat. So if this program starts to turn into drudgery and you're not looking forward to your meals and you're not eating the foods that you really want to be eating and you're eating a bunch of foods you don't want to be eating, it is not going to work. Even if you stick to it for the rest of your life and you have a ton of willpower, which I did, I've done this. I have forced myself to eat foods that I didn't really like and not eat foods that I really did like for long periods of time, like years we're talking, and I did not heal. It's not until I started to understand that when we're truly eating in alignment with ourselves, there is going to be pleasure. And that, again, this, for almost all of us, is going to look like going backwards, eating less clean, less pure, less whatever than we think we need to be eating, because we're actually eating for the level that we're at when we're eating from a place of true pleasure, okay? So, and when I say true pleasure, I mean before you're eating it, while you're eating it, and after you're eating it. So this is why if you're caught in a cycle of binging or eating foods that don't make you feel good, I'm still going to say eat them, but allow yourself to be present while you eat them. Really tune in to how you're feeling when you're eating them, before you're eating them, during you're eating them, and after eating them. And rather than beating yourself up, have gusto, okay? Own the fact that you ate it. Own how you feel. And this is really what's going to tell you if something is something that you need right now to help moderate your path, or if it's an emotional thing that you are ready to let go of through completely embracing the eating of it, okay? Create pleasure with your food. This is the biggest key. Pleasure with eating is the biggest key. So the second this lifestyle turns into drudgery, we need to back up. We need to reintroduce pleasure. We need to reintroduce that food is meant to be pleasurable. Because again, what do we know about the truth? When we're truly in alignment, things feel good. Okay? So when we're truly in alignment, what we eat should feel good. And it should be pleasurable. We're not getting to a place where we just eat lettuce and cucumbers and we're this stoic situation. No. It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be pleasurable. I love everything that I eat. And I don't eat things that I don't love. And I'm vibrantly healthy. So this is the thing, okay? So that's the overall philosophy. Yeah? What does the food give me? What does it take with it when it leaves? What does it leave behind? This is how we start to look at it. And then the second thing is, whatever I find pleasure in right now, whatever I'm craving right now, whatever's going on for me right now, I'm showing up with love so that I can determine if I'm really, really there and if I'm really ready to let go of something, I show up with complete allowance, letting myself eat the thing 100%. And if I really don't need it anymore, I won't want it. And if I do still need it, I will want it, and so I need it. and I trust my body. Okay? See you in the next video.